Because instead of just looking at me this whole time, and I'm not looking at you, instead of looking at me, I'm going to introduce a special guest, one of our guests of honor here today. Now, she said the bio that's written in here was somewhat inflated, that she doesn't deserve all the praise that she has, but I think she does. Artist, craftsperson, fighter, and performer from New Zealand. She works in the film industry and been in world-renowned projects, special effects and such, with The Hobbit, Superman, Man of Steel, Chronicles of Narnia, District 9, every movie you've ever seen. She's 9 feet tall and shoots laser beams out of her eyes. This is all in the bio. I'm just saying, and it's all true. Welcome up to the stage. No. That was the second funniest thing I've seen all day. The first was when he came out on stage the first time. Let's welcome up to the stage, Samantha Swords.
Thank you, everyone. I honestly don't know how to follow that amazing act. Randy, you have my greatest respect, friend, honestly. It takes a lot of guts to get out there in a skirt, and when your legs are that fabulous, we thank you. Hey everyone, so this isn't so much a performance as an interactive discussion about medieval swordsmanship. So I'm here to talk to you about medieval martial arts. I'm going to talk a little bit about weapons safety and cosplay because we all love weapons. We all love swords. Am I right? So my specialty is medieval swordsmanship. I work in the film industry as a special effects technician, and I love my job. I also love being a swordsman. And so I've been studying the martial arts of medieval Europe, and this is the martial arts that existed between the periods of the 12th century through to Renaissance Europe. I specialize mostly in Italian and German martial arts from the 15th century, which was a lot of longsword work. This is not a longsword, this is a claymore. It's about roughly the same size and shape. I brought it today because it's pretty, and I like it. So just ignore the fact that I'm using a claymore to demonstrate longsword. Sorry, a little bit of feedback. Am I good? Okay. The longsword was a fantastic weapon. It was considered like the multi-tool of the medieval era because the longsword wasn't just stick 'em with the pointy end. It was also stick 'em with the beefy end or punch them in the face with the keon, the crossguard. So you had this really great tool, which you could also grab partway down the blade, which was something that people did when they were up really close. So if I could have Agathon, round of applause for this man. He's a former fighter, an SCA king, and he has my greatest respect. Right? Thank you so much. So Agathon is going to be helping me with demonstrating targeting areas for if I'm using a longsword. If we could just get someone to grab the other mic over to the side. Thank you, Agathon. Much appreciated. We've got the benefit of some lines on the ground, which is going to be really helpful for distance. So Agathon, I'm going to give you a sword as well.
Don't do it!
We're not going to be fighting. This is just a demonstration of distance. It's grossly unfair because mine is much longer than his, but it's not size, it's what you do with it. So I'm just going to be demonstrating coming into range from being out of distance. Whenever you go into a fight with somebody, this is for real martial arts, you're very rarely going to have a fantastic, perfect situation where we start the fight and I go, aha, your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries. And he says, you're a scoundrel, I'm going to kill you. either we're going to be starting a little too close because we're in a pub, perhaps a tavern, having a cup of meat and it all turns south, so we're starting too close, or we're starting out of range. So range is the first thing when you're thinking about anything, whether it's a stage fight or a real fight. If I'm out of range, it means that I have to work to get to him. See how I can't actually hit him in one motion? Yeah, and he can't hit me. So the first thing I think about is coming into range. There's this fantastic term that the Romans used to use called crossing the river, which is when the two armies were on either side of the river, but we couldn't actually hit each other. And for the sake of this, the river will be the line on the floor. My eyes. So for this sake, the line on the floor will be the river. We're out of distance, so if you could step back behind your line on the ground there. Excellent. No matter what I do, exactly, all we can do is kind of wibble at each other. So I need to cross into distance. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm going to lead with the sword, or whatever weapon you're using. And you can do this in stage combat. You just need to, when you're leading with the sword, just be really conscious of where you're targeting. Because I'm doing medieval martial arts, my goal is to target him. But if I'm doing stage fight, perhaps I'll choose a different target that might look good for the camera, like for example, over here. So the audience is over here, and for a stage fight, I'll swing in, and all of my force, do you see how that looks very similar to the camera? If I was targeting him, that would be more dangerous for my fellow performer. So when I'm coming into distance, I'm picking a point and committing to it. So in this case, I narrowed my point to just over his shoulder. I was actually targeting back here, which meant it was mostly safe for him. If he'd have perhaps flinched and stepped to the side, he would have stepped into it, but that's about rehearsal, as you know if you're a stage performer. I'm going to go much slower this time. I'm coming into distance, so I'm leading with the sword coming off my shoulder. The sword is in front of me before I step, because if I come in like this, his target is me. So now he has contact with me. I mean, I might have some armor, but this is not ideal, because even if I do have armor, it's going to take me a long time, and by the time I'm moving, he can do all kinds of things to me, exactly. And this man knows his way around a sword, so I'm going to lead with my weapon. I'm coming in and I'm taking the Centerline. You'll notice that I followed through with this. The follow through is the step that I took to set myself in the middle. If I was up against someone that perhaps we were equally matched with weapon and speed and so on, for a strategy purpose, I would hold my foot back and I would gain control of the center line before I committed my foot. And that's just a strategy thing, which I won't go too much into now, but for this, I'm committing my foot. So I've got this really balanced stance. In martial arts, where your intention goes is where your energy goes. And this is throughout all martial arts. So right now, what I want to do is I want to have all of my intent upon him. If it's stage performance, all of my intent is going to be slightly past him. And it means that any time that I'm targeting, my energy is going to that point. So right now, we're bound. This is something you see very little of in films. It's called the bind. And this was the crux and the key of medieval swordsmanship for hundreds of years, and then 60 years of Hollywood, and all we see is this. Right? So this is the bind. At the moment, I can feel where he's at. If we're using sharp swords, it's even better, because I don't have to use my eyes so much, because a sharp sword, if you think about cutting a steak with a kitchen knife, you've got a lot of grip along the surface of the blade. Do you know what I mean? Yeah? If you're using a butter knife, it's a lot more slippery, right? Yeah. So imagine we're using two sharp swords. At the moment we're using foam swords, which also have a little bit of grip along these. These are Calimacil swords, which I really love to use because they're very well balanced, and they're still very safe for us to both do this with. But I can get a sense of where he's at, because I can feel him. I shouldn't have to look at him. So I'm going to move slowly. What we're just going to both do is try and dominate the center line. So I'll dominate the center line now. If I was to extend, I've got a clear path to you. And you're going to defend to push me aside, set me aside, just gently, yeah. So right now, I'm responding to him, but I'm not letting his sword go. So just, yeah, that's it. We'll move slowly, and we'll just stay within this area. And this bind here, this was the key, because the whole time we're bound in the center, we're both safe. We both can kind of feel where we're at. And you notice how I'm very relaxed, and I'm using the sword constantly to threaten him. I'm never taking it too far away, because the moment I take it away, I can't really feel him. I can't respond as fast. And ideally, I should be able to do this with my eyes shut. Swap. No! See, I lost him, I couldn't tell where he was. And because he had reach on me, I couldn't tell where he was. And it's actually a biomechanical thing, because your brain processes nerve pressure faster than it processes light. Come to me. We'll stay in the center. Thank you. I appreciate you binding with me. So the whole goal of this is to gain advantage on the center line. Thank you. The whole goal of this is to gain advantage to the center line before we step in. Because the moment that we step into distance, we're both at risk. As long as our blades are in the center, he has to take a step to hit me. 2 hands, if you will. Thank you. So in order for him to reach me, go for my hand. There we go. He has to step forward. And this is dangerous for him, because if he misses or something, he puts himself in my range. So controlling this center line is, as I said, it's 90% of sword fighting. It's good fencing that you never see in films, because it's all about pressure. And in films, you want big actions the audience can see, or in stage combat. If you're up the back, you can't really see what we're doing, unfortunately. Even with this wonderful camera, because it's all about pressure. But the thing is, if I telegraph, he has so much notice, exactly. He has so much notice to come into me and hurt me before I have a chance to get close to him.
Swing past.
So the other thing is, if I overcommit, if I'm really angry, and in medieval Italian martial arts, they called this the buffalo. If you're up against a buffalo, you know, someone that's like, I'm really gonna smash you! So what the person would do, I'll get you to do that to me. Okay. I'm demonstrating with 2-handed sword. And we'll go slowly. I want him to overcommit, because I'm going to take advantage of that, because I'm not going to resist him. So he's going to come down with a smashing strike. I meet him, really follow through. So, sorry, I didn't direct you very well. You're going to try and really cleave through my body, like from here to here. So he comes down. No, target me. Target my hand. Here. Target this. Go for a full strike. Yep. And go again. Give me a little more power. Cool, 1 more second. Are you comfortable with your spectacles? Or would you prefer? Thank you. I apologize for not bringing 2 even-length swords. So once again, power. Yep, again, more. Good, that's better. A little more. Yeah. So what I'm encouraging him to do is give me too much power, too much commitment. A real cleaving strike. Because when he does, go again. Once more. Thank you. I'm sorry for donking your head. The pressure goes on my blade, and I go, okay, you know what? You're right. And I just let it go. But the thing is, I don't forget what my goal was. My goal was to cut him. If your opponent is so completely set, completely 100% set on hitting you, you're like, okay, be my guest, and just get out the way at the right time. So thank you. The last thing I'm going to show is what happens that you don't usually see in films, which is when you close distance. So I'm going to swap you again. I don't know what your preferred weapon is. I hope you don't mind I'm just giving you a longsword.
I didn't get that.
I hope you don't mind I'm just handing you the longsword. I don't know what your preferred weapon is. Is it a single-hander or is it a two-hander? Cool.
Okay with this.
Cool. So we're going to start out of distance. We'll come into the middle. We'll find the bind. And now we both want to close. And this is the thing that most people don't understand about sword fighting, is when you're close enough to close, it stops being about a sword. Do you see what I mean? I've transitioned into grappling because we're in grappling range. His longsword has maximum effect when I'm beyond this length. But as soon as it gets too close, he has this as a threat to me, but it's not really a sword anymore. It's more of a punching weapon. Or he has a club at the bottom of this. Yeah, exactly. But it's not a sword, right? It's more of a close range weapon. So transitioning from the bind into close range is a lot of what medieval martial artists were doing. The first thing that they learned was wrestling. The second thing they learned was dagger. The third thing they learned was sword. The fourth thing they learned was riding. And you combine all those things, and it comes back to being really, really close. When we're at this range, two dudes or women in a pub having a fist fight. Anything on top of that is an added distance and a different kind of weapon that we're going to use. Thank you so much. I think we've got about 2 minutes for questions.
Yes. So if anyone has any questions,
Thank you very much.
please shout them out and I will repeat them so that they can be heard around. But do you have any questions? The one thing I want to mention, I have a question to start off with, Samantha, is I want you to warn people to not be stupid.
Yes. Thank you so much for reacting to that. That beautiful costumier, the steampunk person, gave me frickin' kittens because of her muzzle control with her prop weapon. And I'm so glad you reacted to that because I was having kittens in the second row. As cosplayers, we have a responsibility to our community. When we take anything that looks like a weapon on stage, we have a responsibility to know how to use it. And I'm not saying you should go out and do rifle training or anything, but just basic understanding of anything that simulates a weapon. Because our community has grown so much wonderfully in the last 5-10 years. Am I right? That people are looking to us, no matter how small the convention, people are looking to us to know what we're doing because we're putting ourselves out there on a stage as a presenter and as a performer. So there was a fantastic panel run the other day about having anything that's a simulation weapon checked piece-tied at security. But it's more than that, it's handling. So I study sharp sword fencing from the Middle Ages, which is not what everyone needs to do. But I still treat all of my things like they're sharp. So when it comes time for me to pick up a sharp sword, I don't have a habit of doing this. Oh, buddy, I'm sorry. Do you know what I mean?
That's how I lost my first toe.
So treating your tools because they're your tools, treating them with the respect of an actual weapon, not only means that you're safer and setting a good example for the costume community, but it also actually improves your own character. Because if your character is a fighter, they're going to understand how the weapon works. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I would point out that the same thing works for firearms or anything close to firearms. If you're a cosplayer and you have a weapon, a gun, why don't you take some handgun safety? Because you know your character would know how to be safe with their own gun. Superheroes don't shoot themselves in the foot. And they know how to hold their own swords. So I think that's someone else had a question. No, well, he doesn't have a question.
Yep, there's someone up there. Did I see a hand?
No?
I did see a hand.
Yeah,
There's
go
two
ahead.
hands. Hello. Hey, what's your name, friend? Stace? Stacy. Hey, Stacy. Nice hat. Gravity Falls, yeah.
Thanks. What's your training usually like? I've always been interested in European martial arts, so your training in terms of like exercise and so on.
That's an excellent question. The question was, what training is there for medieval martial arts? Because he's always been interested in this. I'll do a quick answer and a long answer. The long answer is going to be short. The quick answer is I have a video on YouTube that says how to get started in sword fighting. And it's a 10-minute video that I spent 6 months researching and packing with resources for that very question. And it gives you a map of what the modern medieval sword community looks like. The long answer is that this is something that's developed in the last 15, 20 years, and there are so many different clubs. You can do reenactment fighting, you could do full armored steel combat for championship fights overseas. You could do what I study, which is historical European martial arts as a martial art. There's a huge range, but if you're really seriously interested, 10-minute video, how to get started in sword fighting on YouTube, and I give you so many resources there on how to look for it.
Are you on YouTube Samantha Swords?
Yes.
With an S at the end of swords?
Swords, 2 swords.
Samantha Swords, write that into your phone right now.
And there was one last question, I think I saw a hand, even beyond the lights.
Okay, we're good, our judges are back.
Thank you, everybody.
A dragon, one of the dragons? A dragon, one of the dragons. Before you leave, I want to thank you for coming out.
Oh, wow. Oh,
and here's your own golden dragon to slay.
Oh, my goodness, thank you so much. Oh, this is beautiful. Hi, Movie. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, buddy.
I told you spray paint works really well. One big round of applause for Samantha Swords.